Tax season is starting, and a new federal law is changing how Central Texans should really think about their next tax return. According to the IRS, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act significantly impacts federal taxes, credits, and those deductions. So joining us to talk all about this is Andrew Belnap. He's an assistant professor at UT Austin's McCombs School of Business. Andrew, thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about this. When people first hear, oh, there are changes, they can be good for some people, right?
That's right. And like you said, we had a big, beautiful bill. That meant a lot of changes this summer. Fortunately, most of those changes are good. There were a lot of tax breaks, especially for families, for seniors, and people with tip and overtime income.
I think this is sort of good for folks to hear because the last time during his first presidency, there was also big changes under the Trump administration to the tax code. A lot of people can remember some of the things that changed this time or that time as being not as ideal. You heard a lot of grumblings back then. Now let's talk about some of the things that people will be excited to hear. Let's start off with that child tax credit.
Yeah, so the child tax credit last year was $2,000 per kid. That increased to $2,200. So a typical family with 2 kids is going to see an extra $400 in tax refund from that provision.
Yeah, there's also big news for seniors, and I think this one is really, really big. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so a lot of the things we saw in the One Big Beautiful Bill were based on campaign promises from President Trump. And that's what this is. So he said no tax on Social Security. The law didn't do that exactly, but it did give this deduction to anyone who is 65 and above. So a couple who's filing jointly, they're both over 65, they can get up to $12,000 in deductions.
That is a big number when it talks about the deductions. The other big one that I think a lot of people thought about was the no tax on tips. That was a big campaign promise that we heard. Talk to us about that one.
That's right. No tax on tips. Again, we're not explicitly exempting all tip income from the tax code, but there is a big deduction here. So up to $25,000 of tip income can be exempt.
Okay, so people hear this and they go, okay, this all sounds really good. Does it come at a cost? You know, what's the flip side of all of this?
It does. So the budget projections for the One Big Beautiful Bill were that it would increase our federal deficit. So that is one of the big trade-offs, is that we get larger tax refunds now, but perhaps the long-term outlook of the country, we might be paying more interest on our debt. Sometime down the road, we probably have to increase taxes or cut benefits, or both probably.
I know there's someone listening to this who says, well, I'm not over 65 and I don't have kids. What's going to happen to me? Any changes to the standard deduction, or someone who maybe doesn't fit into those 3 groups that we previously mentioned?
Yeah, so I think those groups will mainly benefit. Everyone broadly is benefiting, even if you don't see it directly, because without the One Big Beautiful Bill, all of the tax rates were scheduled to increase. So it kept the rates at where they were. So even if you aren't directly seeing a benefit here, the bill kept the rates where they were before and prevented them from increasing.
Okay, so this is a lot to be keeping, in your head as you're getting ready for tax season. The IRS is going to start accepting returns on January 26th. What should people be doing right now to get ready?
Yeah, so my biggest piece of advice would be to start early. So given all the changes, there's going to be information that you have to provide, to your software or to your preparer that you've never had to give them before. So one thing we didn't talk about, there's a lot of things we don't have time for, but there's a new deduction for auto loan interest. So they might ask, did you buy a car this year? What model is it? Give us the information on that loan. That's just one example. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't think you would need to bring to your tax preparer that this year might be included. So it's better to start early so that you can have time to get that documentation and not be scrambling to find it on April 15th.
Yeah, I feel like you're talking directly to procrastinators like me. Do not wait until the last minute this year.
Yep.
All right. Assistant Professor Andrew Belnap with the McCombs School of Business, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.